Today we are going to put some satin and matte PPF on this Norton Commando tank. There's not many motorbike tank videos out there. PPFing on tanks is very difficult. With this especially, there's no templates for this, so we're going to bulk fit it. We need to make this entire tank matte PPF. So the other areas of the bike have already been done. We've just got the tank left. So I've already prepped it, so I've given it a good clean. Taking the seat off just so I can get access down here. The air filter is here. So I have covered that with some PPF just because I do not want water going in there, just so that's protected. So with this tank, I'm looking at it in a few different ways. A lot of people might look at putting a join across this line because that's quite a definitive body line here that you could hide a join. However, I see this big black stripe coming all the way through the body, which is a perfect spot to hide a join within this black right on this edge, so I can do this tank in 3 sections. So I can run a join from here, so you see a little bit of here all the way across, and then we can hide it over here. So we do the middle section, then we do the side because this will feed in there quite easily. Splits it up into 3 reasonably flat areas. So that's how we're going to look at it. So I've given it a good clean. Going to spray it up with some slip solution. Don't want to get it crazy wet being a motorbike. I want to try and keep water to a minimum. Squeeze it off, as always, remove the dust. Spray again. So one other thing to remember with PPF and something like this is I'm going to put tension across this whole body, but that means there's going to be a lot of tension around this fuel cap. So I've got to be wary of that and try not to add too much tension across that. So we're going to grab our PPF. Spray up both sides. Should use a peel board, but I'm not today. Peel it all off, flop it over. So this is quite oversized, just to help with this stretch. Right, so straight away, I'm going to trim some of this off because it is a little bit too big. So I can cut this material back here somewhere, just so I'm not fighting with unnecessary material. Next up, we also have I don't even know what that is, something that bolts the tank on, I suppose. I want to cut around this because that's causing us an issue. So I'm just going to do a nice relief cut, not too big, because we don't want it to tear. Always have rounded edges. Just something like that, just so it can flow either side of this bar. Right. Next up, we've got to get good tension through it. So this is the hardest point. So this is where I'm going to look to start. So as always, just like our wing mirrors, so we can bring all these sorts of things into play. Flush out the solution. Create what I call the bowl. So I'm pulling across this cut. But with that, we also want to try and pull down a little bit too, to help take this material away from here. And that should give us a good starting point to pull from. Now we've got to remember to not have too much tension around this. So rather than pulling all this material from here and adding loads of tension here, I'm actually going to have my hands here and focus on just stretching this out. So I'm pulling this material, just trying to get it to that black line. Once we're to that point, like so, you can then squeeze this up to there. So we've created another point now, and I've got no tension going around the fuel cap. So that's to that line nicely, that's cool. Flush it through with a little bit of tack solution. That's perfect. Same this side. Cool. Wicked. Next section. So now we can add a little bit of tension across the fuel cap because we haven't put any on there yet. I'm going to cut this hoop a little bit bigger now. material has twisted slightly, but that's not going to cause us any issues, luckily. Right, so now just a little bit of stretch straight through here. I'm just going to keep my hands here for a second to help that lock into position. Cool. Perfect. Release it around this a touch more because it's just catching. I'm going to keep it quite big because I want to try and tuck it in there a little bit if I can. Right, this side I'm really happy with. Just come around the other side so I can see what I'm doing. Turn the wheel, handlebars. Finish it off down here. So we're going to try and hide our join right in the middle of this point. So it's as hidden as possible. Cool. That's it. Enough time for cutting. So as long as our tension's right, we should be able to cut it straight away. In the bin. Sorry about my sniffing in, I have got a cold. So, cutting PPF. Everyone knows you're never ever fully cutting through the material. You're always just scoring it. So always have a fresh snap. And I'm going to do this side first. So as I said, we're going to stay just along this black edge as neat as we can. So we want to have this as straight as possible. This is where practice with your cutting comes into play. So I'm just trying to stay right along that edge. The slower you go, the easier you might find it. Again, I'm just using the weight of the blade. And we're just going to go straight down. And when we're off the thing, so you can see I'm not through the material. Now I go all the way through. And that should, hopefully, tear away very nicely. Now you can see already, you can't even tell that there's an edge of PPF there. So onto the same with the other side. Being left-handed, this time I'm going to start from the bottom and go round. I might have to stop halfway and readjust myself, hopefully not. Start all the way through this time. Notice how I've also got my pinky finger on the bike just as a bit of stabilisation for my hand. Making sure my elbow is not hitting the handlebar. Cool, right to the edge. Don't go off the edge because you'll cut the paint. We'll start from here again. Whenever you're pulling PPF, always tear it away. If I tear it in, there is a chance it could tear into the actual panel itself. There we have it. That's both edges. Almost had it. next we can trim around the bottom. So on these two edges, I'm actually going to leave it slightly bigger. I'll let it dry and I'll finish that off later. So I can tuck it underneath. There is already a little piece of PPF here, so I'm going to keep that there. Just cut around it. It's a very random shape. And straight down here. And again, straight through. Seal the edge. Cool. Right. Fuel cap. Find my knife again. So this fuel cap, I'm going to trim it slightly bigger first of all. Again, so you can see I'm not actually cutting through the material, just scoring it. Till I get to my last point, and you can go through at an angle, poke it fully through. Hopefully that will tear itself away. Cool. So you can see there straight away we have no tension on this area. If there was tension, the material would be trying to like pucker up and pull across. That's why we did it in our two sections, just so we haven't added any extra tension around this. You can get in there, flush it with some tack solution, which is just water. I'm going to use a squeegee and just work it down into this corner, and then we'll re-trim it again in a minute. Cool, once we're happy with that position, trim again. I've done a couple of cuts now, so I'm going to snap my blade so it's fresh again. Mist it in. And once again, so we've got a little ridge there, which I'm not taking it fully into. I'm cutting just on that edge. It's just a very light cut. This edge. This one I will do in 2 halves. And hopefully we can just get a cut started. Finish off that last little bit. I thought I did. There we go. Seal that. I always like to use a wrap squeegee for sealing edges, just because it's got a felt on there that soaks up the water as we're going. Cool. Middle section. Oh no, this bit. Almost done. So again here, what I'm going to do is trim this PPF just short of this curve. And then slightly big, just so I can drop it in there a little bit on that edge. I'll come around the other side. Into the corner and down. Cool, flush that through a tack, get that stuck. So you can see there's a little bit of tension here, which is why it's puckering up. So that's a good thing, because that actually wants to go into this. So we can use that to our advantage and feed it in. Let's dry that out a little bit more. Flush it out even. Then we can let that dry out and finish it off fully later. Cool, we'll let that dry, come back to that. So, now we'll get around to this side and we'll finish off this side. So we want our join to be over here somewhere as best as possible. So I'm just going to do a nice, neat, straight edge across the front of the tank, like so. And that'll be a nice joining point hidden behind the bars. So because I've been having my hands all over it, we will give it another good clean. And then onto the sides. As always, spray it again. Squeeze it off. Just grab some material. I haven't cut a piece for that yet. So get our next piece of material. Spray it both sides. So we've got our piece. We're going to place it over. So there's a couple of ways we can look at this now, because there's quite a lot of tension we need to add across this. So again, we're looking for the hardest point. This point's quite an easy area. If I pull across here, this pullback will actually help us into this corner. So I'm going to focus on locking it in on this edge first, and then I can pull the material across. So make sure it's covering all the edges. Spray our tack solution in there. Again here, what I'm going to do is add a bit of tension with my thumb to this corner to create my slight bowl and a good hook on that corner. I want the material to be right back here. Now hopefully, it's a little bit colder today, so I might not get a good stretch on it straight away. See, I can now tug this quite hard, and because it's hooked on this corner I can get good tension across it. So my main focus is to make sure I'm across this cut, which is going to be across the top. So a good bit of tension across there. I'm going to hold it again on this point because I might reposition it in a second. As mentioned, the main focus is making sure my tension is going across this cut, not against it. So that's perfect. I actually want a bit more tension on that, because I haven't got enough underneath here to tuck it. So I'm going to go again and pull it a little bit harder. What I'm going to do is cut away some of this excess material. Having too much material can make it a bit more difficult to get a correct stretch sometimes. So taking that away can help you out. Now I'm not fighting with this extra material. That's better. Cool. So I'm just going to keep my hands here for a second. I want it to stick up here, and I'll readjust it in a minute, but just so it holds it in position. Now we can see we've got a nice hook across here and across here. So I've got to this point, I can readjust if I need to now. So I've got a little bit of a build up of tension. Have to wait a minute. Flush it through with a little bit of tack solution, because I want to now pull down to this corner Again, my fingers are inside the panel so I can hook it to this corner. So I'm creating a hook underneath. Looking good. Now we can fit this back up and readjust this whole area. I don't know if it's going to go actually, it's too cold. I'll try and do it without if I can. Yeah, I need more. That's better. Nope, it's no good. How did you get this in here?
I think we used this video.
Did you? That's what we're looking for. So this is a bit of a fight. Just because it is a lot of tension on the material. But we will get to that point in a minute where it all flows really nicely. Cool. So this might look like some bad tension here. But actually, once we spread this out, it will then drop in there really nicely and hold on that edge really well. So that's good. And pick this top edge up a little bit. Spread this tension back. Because we've got so much tension across the top, we can now readjust it. A little bit of dirt trying to get in there, I don't know if you can see that. Let's not let that get in there. Because we had so much tension across this top edge, I could relax the material a bit more. So now we're straight to our cut, which is perfect. No build up of material. Beautiful. We might have to use a steamer just to finish off this edge in a second. Let's see how far we can get it to go. Take off this excess material as well, because this has a little bit of tension. We don't want that, we need to relax that. So I'm just going to pick it up, just let it drop in place. And just by releasing this material that was here, that helps that flow down without any extra stretch. Cool. Little trick I learned for areas like this. Because I've got so much material, I can't get it to stay down straight away. But if I can find this point, this is where you need to trust your cutting and create a perfect cut straight away. So there will be times where that won't go to plan. Hopefully it does for you. Now if we flush this through attack, we can squeeze that water all the way out and it will stay down. He says, as it doesn't stay down. Cool. Lovely. Right, this whole bottom edge, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to cut it slightly bigger and we're just going to give it time to dry out, because I will have to add a little bit of tension to this, hopefully not too much. but we'll wash out this soap, and then we'll give it time to dry out, and we'll come back to that a bit later. Cool. What I might even look at doing on this corner here, so we've still got a pinch up, which is fine. You're going to have a build up of material. It's a tight corner. Is do a nice neat relief cut. So I can see this material wants to flow across here nicely. So we're going to use that. So let's imagine that was stuck down. Let's see if I can actually get this to stick down to this point. Now where we've got this corner, just going to do a nice straight down cut. Tiny little rounded corner. And then overlap this, and then we'll trim it back in a second. So now we're there, we can just follow our cut underneath. And I have a butt joint hidden right underneath the bike that you won't ever see. Once that all dries out, we can finish that off nicely. Cool. And this will go down with a little bit of warmth, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. So now we need to trim our butt joint. So this can be very, very difficult, trying to get it as neat as possible. Sometimes having this little air pocket is quite a good thing, because then you can see where the edge is. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but obviously our aim is to cut right along here. So I'm going to start at this bottom edge. Cut him straight off there. Make sure you've got a fresh snap again. Just trimming straight along that line, cutting basically where the air channel is closed on the outer edge. So that's that joint. Now we're going to come along here, get underneath the handlebar, just figure out where our line is. Just double check, make sure we're following that line nicely. So as you can see, that's pretty invisible. So I'm really taking my time. I'd rather trim it slightly big than have it short, because then at least I can re-trim it. Check that, see how it's looking. Got a tiny little overlap right there, just a minuscule bit. Just going to trim that off. There we go. That joint is almost non-existent. Tiny little bit on show there, but if you catch it early enough, you can just stretch out the material a tiny bit to that edge. Make it go. So a tiny little bit of overlap here as well. That's where you want to be extra careful and just trimming off the most minute little edge. You can see that's it. Another good tip for these is you can buy some like blue edging tape to help you with these edges, but because I've got a big black line to follow, it's not too much of an issue. Straight down and off the bottom. Cool. So there's one tiny little pinch just here still. It's a little bit too close together, or is it? It's on the, it's like a perfect butt, which is where it's just puckering up. So we'll trim that back a tiny bit. I won't, it's gone down. Another slight overlap here. Making sure I've got all the air out of this edge so it's super neat. So I do need to trim this back a little bit. It's a bit too close to each other, so it's just pinching on itself. That's where you got to have a very steady, very light hand. There we go. Cool, double check over it so I can just about fill the line, but I can't see it. So I'm just going to flush out the soap. And I want to try and dry this out. So I've got the heat gun pretty much as low as it goes. 1 is the lowest, I'm on 2. It goes all the way up to 9. So 1 is very mild heat. Just enough to dry out the water. As we're doing this, we're just sawing across the material, trying to spread that tension out. It's a little bit too much of a build-up, so I'm probably going to cut this a little bit shorter. So I don't like to leave that. It probably would go down, but the chances of it lasting are pretty slim. As long as we're right under this top edge, which is here, then we're clear. So as soon as I get to that point where I think there's a bit too much build up, that's where I'll stop. So I'm just going to cut this back to that edge. That's it.
You can always say the
Stand them back up.
buses and all the stuff. It's not really working.
No. I guess at the moment, so the bike is tilted quite on its side, isn't it? So when it's straight, well, we'll lift it. So just trimming back all these extra bits underneath, making sure they're nice and neat. So we've got a tiny little fold overlap. Again, just warming that up, sealing that down, making sure it's perfect. Trim that edge back a little bit. Cool. There you have it. So once the bike stood upright, you can see the PPF's way underneath, and we're all good. And we'll do the other side, and that's it.